Are you confused? Yep, me too. We're out here in Arizona after getting a very cryptic email from Harley-Davidson asking us if anybody in the Yami Noob team had track experience. We all sat around a table and wondered what they had up their sleeves, and fast forward a couple of months, here I am standing behind the king of the baggers motorcycle. This is the championship winning road glide right here, and a bunch of moto journos were out riding it around earlier today. Now, if you're wondering why it's me here talking about big bagger race bikes instead of Yami at a racetrack, I mean, that seems like it would make sense given our predilections. He actually had to go and hide away somewhere because he was going to get his Daytona Simp card taken away if he came and talked about this motorcycle. Also, let's be real, he's not ready to see what a real race bike looks like. This is the future of racing right here. And today we are going to talk with the engineers, the race team, and figure out what it takes to make this 635-pound motorcycle race ready. Let's dive in. Now, I gotta confess to you guys, I spend most of my Sundays watching MotoGP, and that's where a lot of my understanding of motorcycle racing comes from. Now, if you guys are like me and you watch GP, you realize that those motorcycles, while they might look similar to some of their street counterparts, and they do share some parts, there's a lot of things that separate those from their street offspring. So we're gonna sit down with the race engineers and figure out what it takes to make this motorcycle race ready.
Hi, yeah, my name is Jason Kale, and I'm in charge of Screaming Eagle product development, which is probably the coolest job at Harley-Davidson, in my opinion.
So we're talking with the perfect guy to figure out exactly how you take a motorcycle like this and turn it into a race bike. I did a little bit of research before I came in here trying to figure out the rules and what goes into building this motorcycle. And there's a lot of stuff that can be changed, but it's the stock frame in this motorcycle. And a lot of people wouldn't walk into a Harley-Davidson dealer, look at a Road Glide and think, that's the motorcycle I want to take around a racetrack. So what goes into making that motorcycle race ready?
Well, I think that's the beautiful part of it, is that you don't necessarily think that's the motorcycle I'm going to take to the racetrack, but it's very capable of doing that. And a lot of people think a ton of things need to change to have the motorcycle ready to go on the racetrack. And the truth is there's not a lot. It is the stock frame. It is our slightly modified, and I say slightly in truth, 131 production engine that's street legal, that's currently out today. That is the core of the motorcycle that we're out here testing and going around the racetrack and doing 131s at Laguna Seca, so it's pretty cool.
So talking about this engine that's in here, this is the 131 crate motor with a couple of things changed inside, but it's still an air and oil cooled motorcycle. And a lot of people wouldn't think that you're going to be able to push 165 horsepower. Again, that's the number I Googled at home. Pushing 165 horsepower out of a motor like this at redline around a racetrack. What are some of the challenges in adapting a motor like this to being a racing motor?
The biggest challenge for us is heat management, and we can create a lot of power. It's rejecting the heat that's generated when we create that power, and it's the challenge that we've had throughout the season is not just generating a ton of power, but how do we control that power? How do we get it to the pavement? How do we have a stable chassis so that you can use all of the power that the motorcycle is able to create? When you have a piston that is in itself and a cylinder larger than 1,000 cc's, so you have essentially 2-liter bikes on the motorcycle, how do you control it in a way to where it's applying itself correctly and the rider is able to maximize what the bike is capable of? And all that generates a ton of heat, and getting rid of that heat in an air-cooled engine has been our biggest challenge and continues to be, and we're continuously looking how to improve that so we have better overall management and performance of the motorcycle throughout the entire race.
Now, one thing that I also see looking at this motorcycle here, which obviously it's the street glide, not the road glide, but similarly, the seat it's a rolling couch. How do you take something like this you're meant to sit like that, you know, spread eagle on this motorcycle? How do you adapt the ergonomics package on this bike so that you can ride it in an attack position?
A good story, when we started developing the bike, we kind of guessed at where maybe the foot pegs would need to be. We brought Kyle in to test the bike, and he immediately had us go grab foam from the stock room, and he started cutting pieces of foam, and it was layer on layer on layer and layer and layer. And it's really, how did we get the rider's feet underneath of them in a more mid-control package and keep all of that tucked out of the way for lean angle, and it was height in the seat. So I think the seat itself is about 4 inches taller than a standard seat, but allows them to get the foot controls right underneath of him.
So now one more thing that I've noticed today in talking with everybody here is that race on Sunday, sell on Monday is a desire here. That's one of the things that you hear about World Superbike and about MotoGP bikes. Race on Sunday, sell on Monday. How do you see this event, this whole initiative from Harley-Davidson encouraging folks to run out and grab a road glide?
I think it's the neatest thing about this racing series and why Harley-Davidson is participating is because they couldn't any longer, the company couldn't say no to the engineers at the company. The engineers said, we need to be part of this because it's such a close tie to the product that we're actually developing. When you look at the performance team, the Screaming Eagle team that develops all the product with the Screaming Eagle brand on it, they're passionate motorcyclists, they're enthusiasts, they love performance, and they wanted to kind of take the shackles off and see what the team was capable of. And that allows us to take the actual people developing the Street Cannon exhaust or the heavy breather extreme intake or the oil pump with 33% more scavenge capacity that we just launched last summer. All those same people are contributing to the race bike, and everything that they push themselves as designers and as engineers to be able to deliver for the race bike is then incorporated directly back into the product. You will see better product come out from the Screaming Eagle team because of what they're participating in here, and the company has been great about recognizing that and allowing the designers and the engineers the freedom to go have that experience.
Now you could make the greatest motorcycle in the world, and if you give it to somebody like me, I could probably make it competitive with somebody on a pedal bike. To get this motorcycle around a racetrack at race pace, it takes some serious skill. So let's sit down and talk with the riders and see what it's like taking this down the corkscrew at Laguna Seca.
I'm Kyle Wyman. I ride the #1 this year on the Harley-Davidson Screaming Eagle Factory Road Glide Special in the Moto America King of the Baggers series.
Hey everyone, Travis Wyman, riding the King of the Baggers Championship.
What is it like riding one of these big bikes around a racetrack?
Well, it's certainly a little bit different than super bikes or super sport. You know, they're pretty heavy, but they really are super bikes. They're super bikes that are derived from a road glide. So it's definitely something that's a little bit unorthodox, but you know, we start from a stock road glide frame and we bolt as many go fast parts on as we possibly can, and you know the technique is very similar, but definitely a little bit more weight and a little bit more wind we're pushing around that we have to deal with.
Honestly, it's not as scary and as intimidating as it appears to be. The guys at Harley-Davidson have developed such a great platform that when you're on the side of the tire, it feels like a race bike, really. So yeah.
And we talked a little bit earlier today about how there are some challenges with getting all the way leaned over, getting your knee down, and we have a bunch of people who are going to sound off in the comments about how, I went to my first track day and I got my knee down, I got the pictures on Instagram. What are some of the challenges in leaning this bike super far over like that?
Biggest thing is just understanding the weight of the motorcycle. It's different than a sport bike. You know, we're only reaching 55 or so degrees of lean angle, so in order to get your knee on the ground you have to really hang off, and you're kind of limited by the seating position and you know how you are on the motorcycle. So
but I think the hardest part about the knee down in that regard is the fact that the bike is so tall. So the bike is so wide that it has to be extremely tall in order to have that kind of ground clearance where we can get those kind of lean angles, that the knee's pretty far away from the asphalt. So yeah, I actually run these kind of double thick knee pucks that we usually use in the rain in road racing so that I can drag my knee a little bit sooner and get that feel.
Now, did you ever think you'd see the day where you're racing for a factory Harley-Davidson race team?
Well, I certainly hoped I would when I was younger as a flat track racer. You know, coming up through the flat track race and series and rankings and racing 3 years in professional flat track on the Harley-Davidson XR750. When I went to road racing, I never would have imagined I would still maybe have a chance to ride for Factory Harley because they don't have a road racing program, but all of a sudden the King of the Baggers series comes along and Harley-Davidson wants to get involved, and yeah, I find myself, you know, a Harley homegrown kid who raced flat track as a Factory Harley-Davidson rider, but here in road racing in Moto America, so it's pretty special.
it's definitely a dream come true, especially coming from a family that owns a Harley dealership and being around motorcycles my whole life. It's a pretty unique experience for sure.
So with all that being said, what do you see the future of King of the Baggers and Harley's place in it as a series?
I think this is really just the beginning of something that's a wave of a trend in performance baggers. You know, people are starting to, you know, add a lot more performance parts to the engines, to the chassis, and really starting to push the limits in cornering, not just kind of straight line power. And King of the Baggers is a result of what people are doing at home with their road glides, with their street glides, to start pushing the limits of performance in this segment. It's not something that these bikes were intentionally designed to do. They're designed for Grand American Touring, but as you're starting to see the market change and people want more of a performance in this type of motorcycle, you know, a natural progression was for people to start racing them. So, you know, here we are, and we have King of the Baggers expanding even again to 7 rounds next year, and I really think that this is just the start of something that's going to be a huge wave.
Now, some of you at home might be thinking that King of the Baggers is a niche racing event for weirdos who want to see a big motorcycle go around in circles real fast. But it's racing that drives innovation. It's the reason why Honda has their crazy CBR 1000 RR SP Fireblade, which is a pretty fast motorcycle with the longest name in history that creates some very spectacular oil explosions on the street because they plated a race bike. But it's this renewed passion in racing that really has me interested in what the future of Harley-Davidson racing is going to look like. Do you see yourself rubbing elbows at all with R18s or big Star Ventures from Yamaha in the future?
I think so. I would welcome that. I would love to see, you know, not just the American brands in our series, because I think that you know, there's a big opportunity not just with Harley-Davidson, but all of the brands to really take hold of what's going on. And you know, we're obviously seeing a very swift reaction from Harley-Davidson to come out with a performance bagger like the ST models and the Street Glide and the Road Glide.
It's just one of those series that, you know, a lot of people kind of shied on and didn't even think was possible. And so I'm not going to rule anything out at this point if other brands want to get involved or other riders. I mean, the series has gained so much traction in the last 2 years that I think the future is very bright for this series. So I think anything's just about possible at this point.
With the 2 brands now, you know, there's plenty of opportunity for us to keep things equal. Like we can add weight or we can do different things to do, because they're basically, I mean, they're not the same, but I mean, they're at least similar. But if you started adding other manufacturers, I don't know where it would go. I mean, it's possible, everything's possible, but it's a pretty broad range of motorcycle.
I think it's less of a company conversation than it is just a motorcyclist conversation. And the coolest thing to come out of the series to me is seeing all of the different people at the racetrack. I spent more time at a racetrack last year than I had in my entire life.
Now, hopefully you guys have enjoyed this behind-the-scenes look at the King of the Baggers race program here from Harley-Davidson. Big shout out to the guys for sitting down with a bonehead like me and explaining all of this stuff to me so you guys can enjoy it at home. If you want to see more about what's going on behind the scenes at Harley, stay tuned here. We've actually got another video coming down the pipe for tomorrow, which is going to be a new look at some of their street bikes. So stay tuned for that, and until then, I'll catch you in the next one.
Hey, great seeing you here. Didn't think I'd see you back at the end of another Yami Noob video. Yes, this video is actually over, but if you hit this link over here, you can keep watching Yami Noob. Leave me a comment on this one and that one if you don't mind. Let me know if you liked it or hated it, and then maybe we can make the videos better. Keep improving, right?